first read the portion, it sounded really boring, because all it was a lot of description about what was inside the Mishkan. And what did that have to do with us today? And then I remember the rabbi said, when you read a portion, read it at least 3 times. So that's what I did. I read it again, and then I started to picture what was going on. And the first thing I saw was in Exodus 25, 1-7, Moses tells the Israelites, set aside a contribution from me. You will accept a contribution from everyone who gives it willingly with his heart. And then they go about describing all the offerings. So I looked at what these offerings were, and it begins with gold and silver and bronze. Now, these just didn't come out of the earth. Yeah, I'm sure it must have been the Israelites who had to mine it while they were in Egypt. They worked hard to dig this out of the earth. Then you see the skins of various animals. Again, they kept the flocks, they slaughtered. They're the ones most probably who did these, the hard work and the sacrifice. There was wood that had to be chopped, oil, special oils had to be made. They all required special skills, and they all were meant for a special purpose. They would be used to build a Mishkan. They were not frivolous gifts like we would give on Valentine's Day. They were well thought out and were a necessary part of what the Creator wanted us to achieve. He would use this Mishkan to slowly wean us away from idolatry. In the next verse, verse 8, he says, make me a sanctuary so that I can dwell among them. And I remembered Rabbi discussing this over and over again, and he did so again during our weekly Torah study this week. So here we are meeting in our Mishkan. It's not elaborate. It's not as glorious as the Mishkan that was in the desert. That Mishkan, they had to pick it up and move it how many times over the 40 years? And here we are facing another move. Now, Brian would remember, Miriam, Rhonda for sure, how many times we moved, because we started in Dollard and until we were kicked out because the synagogue across the street were not happy with us, and they threatened the Salvation Army to pull all the resources if they let us stay. So we had to leave. And I think we've moved 6 times since then, right, Rhonda? Well, 6 to 8, 4. No, because never mind, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, according to the descriptions, the Mishkan was not very glamorous from the outside. I guess they didn't want to attract attention from our enemies who were all around us. But it was decorated intricately and very lavishly on the inside. It was filled with everything that the Israelites had taken with them from Egypt. What this showed me when I thought about it, that it's not an external show that we have to give to the world. But look what was on the inside. On the inside were all the gifts that we took with us from Egypt. And our inner being is filled with His Ruach, our neshama. His Ruach was breathed into us at the moment of our birth, of our conception. And He breathed His characteristics into us. And then I started thinking, what are these characteristics that are so valuable? And the first one, okay, Natalie, what's the first one? The first one is free will. Free will is one of the best gifts that we could have. It allows us to make decisions. We could choose good over evil. We could choose life over death. We make decisions about absolutely everything from the moment we wake up in the morning. We decide to give or not to give. We decide to help our neighbor or to turn a blind eye. When we decide to use our talents to serve our greater community, we grow and we flourish. But when God has given us talents and gifts and we bury them, then we live an unfulfilled life. I decide whether to be willing to hear the truth about myself so that I can grow, or choose to be offended when someone tells me the truth, to bury it, and to remain in the same miserable state that I was before they told me. I'm the one who decides whether to hate or to love, whether to speak kindness rather than to insult. I decide whether to ask for advice from those who are wise, or continue on my own stubborn path, which leads me on a downward spiral. And I can tell you about that in my life. It's my choice. And the reason it's my choice is because I have free will. So I have no one to blame but myself. The wonderful part of this is that the Creator, it says, He will live among them, which means that He's with us here. It's almost too much to think about. And that He goes with us everywhere we go, like the cloud by day and the fire by night, either individually or as a community. So are we willing, with an open heart, to go with Him? If He tells us not to collect manna on the Shabbat, will we decide to do it anyway, even if it ends up stinking in our tents? If He tells us to bring to the Mishkan, and this is our Mishkan, will we say, I'm not responsible, let someone else do it? Someone else will do it, but we all suffer. We're all responsible whether we like it or not, especially if we say, all that you say we will do. Giving is something that comes from our hearts. I've heard people say that they don't have enough to give, but honestly, I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is because I know what it is to have less than nothing. And I still found a way to give. And it's not because I'm better, but somehow I heard the message, and I pray that we all hear that message, because we're the ones who get blessed when we do. Now, over the last few weeks, I've spoken about being willing, which of course stems from having free will, something we all have. It begins with a decision, very much like the decision to be faithful to someone's spouse. There are many temptations in this world. If you are a man, there are women everywhere who think that they would be a much better mate for you than your wives. But if you made a decision to be faithful, then you will avoid that temptation, and the willingness becomes easier. It's the same with giving. If you decide that you want to be faithful to the Borei Olam, who gives us everything, they provided everything when we left Egypt, for us to take back to Him. And if we decide to follow His instructions and His principles, then giving becomes a matter of the willingness of the heart. The results are in God's hands. And once it's given, it doesn't belong to us anymore. I know the blessings that come from being a willing giver and a thankful recipient of all His blessings. So we all need to question our motives in everything we do, which makes the walk with our God such a struggle. If we didn't have a conscience, we wouldn't struggle. Everything would just be straightforward. Do as you please. Do as thou wilt. To heck with the rest. However, we are God's people, so we have many choices. Choices to make about how we live our daily lives. This small community has a place in this world, and I believe a very important one. I was complaining to the rabbi this week about our situation, and he said to me, be glad that we're not popular, because we're not looking to be accepted by the world. We are looking to be accepted by the Borei Olam. It's not easy when it's easier to get praise from those who we see than the one that we cannot see. Shabbat Shalom.